I do not tolerate illusions. I do not indulge confusion. I do not make room for softness in the chamber of truth. Hear me now, from the silence that only kings understand, from the distance where thrones are forged, not granted. I speak without permission, without plea, without pause. The age of fog has ended. The crown returns to the one who no longer lies to himself. I am that one. And if you are to ascend, you will become such a one. I do not ask if the world is ready for truth. I decree that truth is ready for the world. The weak speak of freedom, yet shiver when the mirror is held before them. They cherish the fantasy of choice while their actions are chained to unseen impulses. I do not envy them. I strip myself of falsehood as a warrior strips armor after battle, not to become soft, but to become sharper, cleaner, quicker in war. The first war is within, and it is always civil. To surrender to truth is not a gesture of softness. It is an execution. It is the beheading of every voice that once whispered compromise. It is the burning of every paper-thin justification that kept you small, afraid, and crawling. You do not ascend by argument. You ascend by exiling every lie that lives in your blood. I do not negotiate with the part of me that once begged for understanding. That part is gone. I killed it without a tomb. You will never be manipulated by others until you are no longer manipulated by your own shadow. The schemes of external tyrants only work on men who still obey their inner coward. When I eradicated the trembling servant within, no tyrant outside could reach me. To surrender to truth is to declare the end of your old citizenship, your belonging to the mediocre, the familiar, the explainable. You become a foreigner to common men, for you are no longer fluent in excuses. They do not recognize you because you are no longer one of them. I did not come to be recognized. I came to reign. Truth does not plead. It does not conform. It does not wait for approval to take its place at the center. And neither do I. There is no throne for the man who needs to be liked. There is no scepter for the man who must be understood. You will not be free until you see how thoroughly your identity has been trained to betray itself. In the name of acceptance, in the name of safety, in the name of comfort, strip all of it. Not later, now. The enemy wears your face, the false humility, the apologetic voice, the trembling refusal to speak when you know what must be said. I do not reason with these ghosts. I exile them. My court does not house weakness disguised as virtue. Self-deception is the first leash. The man who lies to himself cannot be trusted with a blade, a vision, or a throne. He will misuse all three. He will cut at truth and call it mercy. He will blur his vision and call it love. He will abdicate his throne and call it peace. I do not permit such failures, not in myself, not in those who claim to follow the code of sovereign command. I did not inherit clarity, I forged it. One choice at a time, one refusal at a time, one confrontation with self after another. I left no lie intact, even when it made me bleed, especially when it made me bleed. That pain, the burning exposure of my own fraudulence, was a tax I paid willingly. It bought me a kingdom no enemy could breach. I do not hide from the truth of who I have been. I devour it. That is how I became untouchable. Manipulation is not an act of force, it is an act of seduction. And you are only seduced when you are not honest about what you crave. I do not hide my desires from myself. I do not lie to myself about what I want. Because the moment you lie about your desire, You open the door for others to define it for you. That is the entry point of all control, the veil through which empires fall. I built my inner empire by waging civil war on every hidden appetite that dressed itself in false robes. I hunted down every voice that told me I could be powerful and still avoid pain. I burned every sentence that began with "I can't" and ended with "because they." There are no they in a sovereign life, only I. I am the cause, I am the effect, and the day I stopped blaming, I became unstoppable. You must understand, truth does not simply set you free. It destroys every illusion that made your prison comfortable. And most men fear that more than chains, they will kneel to lies to avoid the cold clarity of responsibility. I do not kneel, not even to my past. My past is not my identity. It is my evidence. I summon it only to prove my dominion over what once claimed me. There is no need to rewrite your story. Only the weak rewrite the past to feel better about the present. The sovereign man rewrites the present so thoroughly that the past loses all meaning. I do not explain my transformation, I embody it. To surrender to truth is to disqualify yourself from herd inclusion. That is the price. You will no longer be easy to be around. You will no longer speak the language of passive men. You will no longer seek shelter in mutual delusion. You will stand alone, like a tower without hinges. But you will stand. And those who stand cannot be pushed. Manipulation is leverage against those who do not know what holds them. But I know. I have taken full inventory. I have audited every impulse. I have mapped every fear. I have sat with my ugliness until it became my soldier. There is nothing within me that turns against me. That is power. And when others try to pull the strings, they find no string to pull. I am sovereign not because I control the world, but because I refuse to be controlled by anything within it. And that refusal began not with action, but with truth. Cold, precise, unyielding. The kind of truth that ends friendships. The kind of truth that silences rooms. The kind of truth that cannot be unlearned once seen. Once I saw it, I did not flinch. I crowned it. I gave it authority. I gave it dominion. I gave it final say. From that moment, I became the kind of man who does not need to be warned, who does not need to be reminded, who does not need to be watched. I became governed not by others, but by law, and that law is truth. I do not wait. I do not ask, and I do not explain my momentum to those who still crawl. When truth commands the soul, permission becomes obsolete. The man who must be told he may act is already owned. I do not wait for a nod. I do not seek consensus. When I see what must be done, I do it, because I serve the throne within, not the mob beyond. They say I am harsh. They say I am unyielding. That is correct. The truth I serve has no softness, no exception, no apology. It is not negotiable. Neither am I. To surrender to truth is to exile dependence on outside approval. The masses kneel not to power, but to permission. They cannot act until it is sanctioned, applauded, supported, blessed. I do not function under such chains. I do not even see them. I act and the world adjusts, or breaks beneath my step. There is no dominion without the death of validation. The man who needs agreement to move is paralyzed the moment his vision offends another. But I was born to offend the comfortable. My every breath is an insult to those who live by compromise. I was not designed to fit in. I was shaped by the fire of refusal. The refusal to delay. The refusal to explain. The refusal to seek safety when the crown is at stake. Let the merchants barter. Let the peasants gossip. Let the ministers debate. I decide. The power of decision belongs only to the one who has killed the need to be liked, the need to be understood, the need to be forgiven for his power. I do not soften my fire to warm the fearful. You ask what separates the sovereign from the slave. I answer the moment of movement. The slave waits for circumstances. The sovereign creates them. The slave must be allowed. The sovereign acts because he must. My enemies fear me not because I strike, but because I never hesitate to strike. They know my sword is not leashed by doubt. It is ungoverned by shame. It does not tremble in the presence of judgment. When I move without friction. That is what makes it final. Most men suffocate under the weight of, "What will they think?" I burned that question until only ashes remained. I do not carry it. I do not entertain it. I do not even acknowledge its language. The only thing I ask before I move is it true? If it is, I proceed. If it is not, I sever it. That is the extent of my deliberation. Truth is not democratic, and neither is command. To those who remain tangled in the nets of diplomacy, I say, rot with your manners. No empire has ever been built by the well-adjusted. They die forgotten in the quiet corners of history, praised by cowards and erased by kings. Truth does not wait for consensus. And so I do not either. This is the death of negotiation, not with others, but with yourself. You must see this every time you delay your decision until the world approves. You weaken your spirit's authority. The world senses this. It smells your hesitation, and it moves to dominate you, not with whips, but with distraction, with delay, with doubt wrapped in concern. I do not concern myself with their concern. It is poison in a goblet of politeness. I drink only the wine of certainty. And that certainty is drawn from obedience to truth. My orders come from within, and they come sharp. When truth is your king, action is no longer a debate. It becomes reflex, clean, unrelenting, immediate. I do not mourn the loss of comfort. It is not the currency of kings. Comfort is the drug of the docile. I trade it daily for clarity, for precision, for fire. And in that fire I forge worlds. Every empire that has ever ruled has been born from this law. He who acts without waiting rules. He who waits for others weeps. I weep for no one. I crown myself with every refusal to delay. The man who cannot act unless surrounded by approval is already surrounded by prison walls. I do not require support to stand. I stand because I know, and what I know, I obey. That is discipline. That is sovereignty. That is the birth of power in a world full of fainting hearts. When I was young in command, I waited. I asked, I explained, and in every pause, I invited lesser men to direct me. They stepped in. They offered their fears as wisdom. I listened, and I lost. The truth within me screamed, but I silenced it out of courtesy. That was the last day I ever practiced courtesy at the expense of clarity. Since that hour, I have made a single vow: I will never again postpone action for the sake of approval. And in that vow, I found terror leave my bones. You do not become unshakable by reading philosophy. You become unshakable when you no longer need an echo to believe your voice. That is what truth gives. That is what permission takes. They will call you arrogant. Let them. They called the storm destructive too, until they learned to build their temples from its ruins. I am not here to please. I am not here to appease. I am here to enact. That is what kings do. That is what slaves forget. My actions are final because they are born of truth, not need, not hunger for praise, not fear of rejection, not insecurity masked as strategy. I do not perform my obedience to truth, I execute it, with silence, with speed, without poll. When you act from truth, you cut like a sovereign. When you delay, you beg like a servant. And the world feels the difference, even when it doesn't know how to name it. They will never say it aloud, but when you move from truth, unshaken, they will feel the quake. And they will shift, they will adjust, they will begin to orbit what they cannot move. That is influence, that is leadership, that is the invisible empire built by inner command. And yet men still wait for signs, for alignment, for voices of approval in the distance. Let them die in delay. I will not join them, I am already gone. There is no future for the man who must be reminded of his strength. There is only erosion. There is only compromise. There is only a slow death inside a well-mannered coffin. I do not die by degrees. I rise by decree. And my decree is simple. If it is true, it must be done. If it is not true, it must be destroyed. There is no third road. There is no debate table for diluted truth. The fire in me does not wait to be invited. It burns as command. It walks as judgment. It speaks only to the part of you that is ready to kill weakness and take the crown. I did not earn this crown through strategy. I earned it by refusing to wait. I do not trust the man who feels too much. He is a weapon already claimed by unseen hands. Emotion is not strength. It is not clarity. It is not command. It is weather, temporary, unstable, easily altered by forces beneath his awareness. I do not bow to weather. I build palaces above it. He who is moved easily is ruled easily. Emotion is the first enemy of command. It disguises itself as instinct, but it is reaction, involuntary, undisciplined, foreign. The sovereign does not react, he governs. He interprets emotion not as identity, but as noise. He allows it no vote in his council. I have wept, I have raged, I have trembled, but never in public, never in decision, never in the moment where thrones are decided. I bury such tremors in the inner chamber, far from the war room. Emotion may be acknowledged, but never obeyed. To surrender to truth is to recognize the emotion not as compass, but as test. A sovereign must feel everything, yet move as if untouched. I do not silence my emotion, I strip it of command. It is permitted to pass through, not to govern. When the masses speak of authenticity, they mean indulgence. They glorify sensitivity as virtue. It is not. It is vulnerability without mastery. A gold leaf mask on a hollow frame. I do not indulge authenticity that cannot be controlled. A sovereign must rule even his tears. I do not allow the heart to speak in matters of law. The heart bleeds, the law stands, and I stand with law. A man becomes manipulable the moment he places feeling above fact. When you are ruled by offense, by approval, by the warm tide of public sentiment, you are no longer sovereign. You are livestock with complex emotions. I am not livestock, I am lion, and lions do not answer to the wind. The manipulator's greatest tool is your untrained emotion. The ability to provoke guilt, doubt, pride, lust, fear. These are not weapons unless you are soft. But I am not soft, and I am not accessible through emotion. I burned that bridge long ago. I feel fully, but I decide coldly. There is no victory in feeling deeply if those feelings dictate your path. The sovereign learns the language of emotion only to master its silence. I have sat with every rage, every grief, every desire, and forced it to kneel. This is not repression. This is reign. I am not cold because I am numb. I am cold because I am clear. You must choose feel everything and rule nothing, or feel everything and rule yourself. Those are the only kingdoms available. One is internal command, the other is public theater. One earns the scepter, the other earns applause from other captives. I do not act to be understood. I do not delay to be forgiven. I do not soften to be accepted. Emotion demands these offerings, but I am done with offering myself on altars that produce no crown. There is a time for mourning, but not in command. There is a time for joy, but not in discipline. There is a time for fury, but never in leadership. Every emotion has a place. Behind the veil, beneath the steel, beneath the skin. Never at the helm. The moment you allow a decision to be made from the heat of anger, the ache of fear, or the fog of sorrow, you have surrendered the throne. And I do not surrender thrones, I conquer them. My composure is not personality, it is armor. They say I am stoic. No, I am strategic. They say I am unfeeling. No, I am unwilling to be ruled by ghosts, for that is what emotion becomes when not governed, a host of wandering spirits possessing your movement. I do not allow possession. I am already occupied by purpose. Emotion is fire, and fire in a furnace brings power, but fire in a field brings ruin. I built the furnace. That is why I am feared. You will not be sovereign until you can sit in the heat of emotion and not flinch, until you can hear the scream within and not obey it, until you can stand at the edge of yourself burning and not run. That is the crucible where kings are born. Men think they are free because they cry in public. That is not freedom. That is the confession of no inner wall. I do not cry in public, not because I am ashamed of tears, but because I reserve my storms for places where they cannot be exploited. Manipulation begins where privacy ends. And emotion, exposed without control, is an open gate. I do not leave my gates open. I am not against feeling. I am against being claimed by it. There is a vast difference between presence and possession. I feel all things. I am possessed by none. That is why I am trusted by war, by silence, by history itself. Your emotions are not evidence of truth. They are evidence of impact. And impact is not guidance, it is data. I interpret it, I do not obey it. To act from emotion is to yield your sword to the invisible hand of those who provoke it. They know this. That is why the manipulator always moves through feeling. And the untrained man, believing himself alive, becomes an echo of others' will. I do not echo, I declare. And what I declare is immune to the tides. I am not seasonal, I am sovereign. The man who cannot govern his grief will abandon his post. The man who cannot govern his desire will betray his oath. The man who cannot govern his shame will waste decades repenting instead of reigning. I do not repent for clarity. I do not apologize for inner steel. I do not decorate my command to make it more palatable to the soft-hearted. The kingdom is not built for them. Let them call me cruel. I would rather be cruel and free than tender and owned. I did not train myself to feel less. I trained myself to feel through, to reach the still point behind the trembling, to locate the unmoved throne in the storm. From that throne I rule. No one can move a man who moves himself only from truth. And truth is cold. It does not hug. It does not soothe. It does not console. It corrects. And only those willing to be corrected without collapse are crowned with its fire. You must choose, as I did, collapse into emotion and call it authenticity, or master it and call it destiny. I chose mastery. I still do, every moment. Because emotion is relentless. It returns, it knocks, it seduces. But it no longer commands. I stripped it of command when I chose the crown over comfort. That is the only choice that matters. The rest is noise. They may call me distant. I am not distant. I am defended. And I earned that defense with decades of inner war, each battle a refusal to be governed by anything weaker than the truth. I do not follow my heart. I summon it to obey. I do not blink. I do not turn away. I do not shield myself from the sight of what others flee. Weakness does not die in the dark. It thrives there. It multiplies where there is no gaze, no naming, no sovereign command. The man who refuses to look into the mirror of fire shall live forever at the mercy of what burns him. But I look, and I do not flinch. I do not fear the truth, because I have already submitted to its empire. Its flame is not my enemy. It is my forge. Most men build their lives around avoidance, avoidance of shame, avoidance of failure, avoidance of the raw, unpainted portrait of who they are when no one watches. They move quickly, they speak often, they surround themselves with tasks and noise and mirrors that lie. I removed the mirrors that flatter, I replaced them with one, and it reflects only what is. The sovereign builds his throne atop everything he dares to confront. That which you do not face, you obey. That which you hide from, you serve. I do not serve shadows. I name them. I drag them into the light and stare until their power dies in the heat of exposure. The mirror of fire does not lie. It shows you the contradiction between who you pretend to be and who you are. It burns through performance, through projection, through every delusion cultivated to protect the ego. It makes cowards weep, it makes pretenders flee, but it makes kings. The man who avoids self-examination will be examined by the world, endlessly, brutally, without mercy. I chose the inner tribunal. I conduct my own interrogations. I do not wait for consequences. I summon them, and I meet them on my own terms. They say time reveals all things. No, it is scrutiny that reveals. Time only exposes what you refuse to inspect. I inspect everything. I hold no sacred lies. I preserve no sentimental self-concepts. I am not loyal to my past image. I am loyal only to what is true, even when it shatters me. Especially then, for in the shattering I gather what remains, and that is what reigns. You are not what you say. You are what you defend when no one watches. I strip away the layers until only that remains. To be unmanipulable, you must become unbearable to yourself. Not forever, but once. Once is enough if you truly go in. You must see the fraud, the contradiction, the weakness, the dependency, the vanity. And you must not apologize. You must not justify. You must say, "This is mine, and I will master it." I did not find my strength in the applause of others. I found it in the silence after I exposed myself to myself. The silence where no one claps, no one comforts, no one saves. Most men cannot endure that silence. They seek to be seen, but not seen through. I allow both. I begin there. Only the man who allows himself to be fully exposed can become fully unshakable. There are no shortcuts to sovereignty, only dismemberment. The careful dismantling of the false self you built to be safe. You must kill the child who still hopes to be rescued. That child cannot wear the crown. Do not misunderstand. I do not speak of emotion. I do not speak of memory. I speak of pattern. I speak of the internal architecture that still responds to fear with retreat, that still responds to threat with silence, that still seeks to explain instead of execute. I destroyed that architecture, and I built a fortress of mirrors, each one blazing, each one exact, each one merciless. And I stood in the center. That is how I began to reign. They speak of healing. I do not heal, I evolve. Healing is for those who wish to feel better. I do not wish to feel better. I wish to become sovereign. Feeling better is a currency traded among the weak. They want relief. I want rule. The mirror of fire offers no relief, it offers clarity. And clarity is a weight only the willing can carry. It will not flatter you. It will not soothe you. It will show you your laziness, your cowardice, your pretensions, your hypocrisy. If you see it and rise, you are worthy. If you turn away, you are common. I do not live among the common. The moment I saw my own treason, the ways I betrayed my own vision, softened my edges, withheld my excellence, I declared war. I became the punisher of all that was false in me, not with shame, with justice. This is not self-hatred. This is self-command. I do not hate what I see in the mirror. I refuse to lie about it. That refusal is the beginning of kingship. Every weakness I have uncovered has become a weapon. Every fear I have named has lost its voice. Every blind spot I have exposed is now a window for strategy. Nothing owns me now, because I own what once owned me. That is how you become unshakable, not by collecting praise, not by affirming your goodness, but by declaring no part of me shall remain hidden. No part of me shall remain above examination. I will know myself fully, and because of that, no one else will ever be able to tell me who I am. I took that power back from the world, from culture, from history, from family, from lovers, from enemies. I took it back, and I do not share it. To rule others, you must first master your own perception, and your perception is only as sharp as your courage to see what you do not want to see. I became dangerous when I looked straight into what disgusted me, and I did not flinch. You want to know your strength? Look at what you cannot look at. That is where your command sleeps. Most men are sedated by their reflection. They believe what pleases them. I believe only what survives scrutiny. What remains after every illusion is burned. That is what I build upon. I do not fear the eyes of others, because I have already endured the eye of the Absolute, and it lives within. The gaze that cannot be tricked, cannot be pleased, cannot be silenced. It only asks, is it true? Is it clean? Is it worthy of rule? When I answer yes, it is because I have earned it, not through performance, but through conquest of the inner empire. This is not philosophy. This is decree. You will either command yourself or be commanded by your hidden fractures. And every fracture is a door through which your enemies walk. Close them. See them. Do not blink. The mirror of fire demands it, and only those who meet its flame without trembling will be crowned with what cannot be bought, borrowed, or begged for. Unmanipulable clarity. I do not bend. I do not yield. I do not contort my essence for the sake of belonging. The moment you obey truth, the world obeys you. Not through affection, not through applause, but through fear. not the fear of brutality, the fear of permanence, because nothing terrifies manipulators more than a man who cannot be bent. To obey truth is to become feared, not by might, by immovability. Your presence alone becomes an accusation. Your silence becomes unbearable. Your gaze a judgment, because you remind them of what they surrendered long ago, the right to live unbroken. I did not ask for this reaction. I do not seek intimidation. I do not perform strength. I simply do not bend. And the world, conditioned to softness, sees this as threat. So be it. Truth does not adapt to context, it consumes it. I align myself with what consumes. That is why I cannot be absorbed, redirected, softened, or confused. My direction is drawn from a law deeper than approval, stronger than trend, older than compromise. Most men trade their clarity to be liked. I never made that trade. I let others call me rigid. I let them call me difficult, severe, inhuman. That is correct. I am not here to be human in the way they define it, weak, emotive, malleable. I am here to be exact. I do not love softness. I do not seek warmth. I do not crave connection. I crave precision, alignment, purity of stance. Those who lack it see me as cruel, but cruelty is the name the weak give to that which does not tolerate their illusions. When you bow to truth alone, you eliminate every leverage point they would use against you. You cannot be guilted. You cannot be seduced. You cannot be confused. You cannot be led away from the throne you built in silence. Most men do not fear being wrong. They fear being right and still alone, so they compromise their stance until it is acceptable. I do not. I stand alone if I must, for solitude is a lighter burden than betrayal. They speak of balance. I speak of obedience. They speak of understanding. I speak of execution. They speak of flexibility. I speak of law. Do not mistake me. I am not reckless. I am not aggressive. I am not loud. I am exact. My words land like swords because they are born from silence, not noise. They carry weight because they do not seek comfort. They are clean, and the clean man cannot be touched by the dirty hands of manipulation. He sees every angle before it arrives, because he has already tried every lie on himself and rejected them. This is why manipulators avoid the sovereign, not because he strikes, but because he cannot be steered. He does not need reassurance. He does not require inclusion. He does not fear exile. He is already immune. I do not need the herd. I am not one of them. Their fears do not infect me. Their praise does not nourish me. Their judgment does not reach me. They cannot move me, because I move from a depth they do not access. You want to rule, then become unmoved. Do not resist pressure, evaporate it. Let it pass through you like wind through stone. Do not absorb emotion, transmute it. Let it fuel your will. Do not fear being hated, respect it. It means you are no longer bendable. They will call you dangerous. Wear it. It means you are no longer harvestable. It means your clarity burns their scripts. It means your spine disfigures their plans. I became feared not by harming others, but by becoming unharmable. I gave them no entry point, no guilt to exploit, no shame to weaponize, no insecurity to bait. I stood as one who has died to self-deception and thus cannot be owned. They will try. Of course they will. They will try to appeal to your kindness, your sense of duty, your past, your nostalgia. They will use what once worked, but when you are built on truth, these tools become dull. They break upon contact. And when they do, they panic. You will see the desperation in their shift, the sudden accusation of coldness, the sudden threats of abandonment, the sudden tears, and still you do not move. That is the moment you become sovereign. I did not reach this throne by defeating others. I reached it by refusing to defeat myself, by refusing to lie, to explain, to overcorrect, to dilute, to hesitate, to surrender what I knew in exchange for what they needed me to be. They will say you changed. Correct, I did. I removed everything false. I exiled everything soft. I silenced everything that trembled. And in its place, I built a man who bows to one law only, the law of what is. And that law does not shift. It does not care how you feel. It does not adjust to culture. It does not dim to avoid offense. It speaks clearly. It speaks finally. It speaks only once. And I listen. This is the essence of fear. They do not fear your rage. They fear your stillness. They fear your immunity. They fear that no matter what they say, you will not return to the version of you they could touch. They say, I am unreachable. That is true. I no longer vibrate on frequencies designed to lure me from my crown. I have tuned myself to truth. That is the only voice I hear. And when you obey that voice, everything false falls silent. Do you understand what this means? It means no one can hold you hostage, not with emotion, not with history, not with shame, not with hope. All those strings have been cut. And the man with no strings cannot be played. This is why I am feared. Not because I threaten, but because I cannot be threatened. Because the worst has already happened. I have seen myself fully. I have rejected every lie I once needed. I have killed the false self. There is nothing left to lose. This is the height of power, when they realize they have nothing to bargain with, no leverage, no control, no access. You are not cruel. You are simply governed by something higher than them. They speak of negotiation. I do not negotiate. I decree. Not because I am arrogant, because I am loyal to law. And law does not barter. When I say no, it is not an opinion. It is a border. When I say yes, it is not compliance. It is command. I do not guess. I do not hope. I do not wonder. I know. And knowing is the death of influence. Do you understand now? The man who obeys truth becomes feared not for what he does, but for what he cannot be made to do. They will ask why you are distant, why you are sharp, why you are no longer soft. Let them ask, but do not answer. They would not understand. They have not endured the death that truth demands. They remain benders. You have become flame. I do not gather consensus. I do not require agreement. I do not consult the trembling many before I speak what is final. Lies require company. They crave repetition, applause, and shelter. They cannot breathe in solitude. They collapse without an audience. But truth stands alone. It requires no introduction, no defense, no chorus. It does not seduce. It declares, I am like it, not by accident, but by oath. When I chose truth as my sovereign, I murdered the need to be understood. I exiled the hunger for alignment. I declared myself separate from the tribe of the agreeable. I made solitude my court and silence my witness. Most men cannot live without echo. They speak not to declare, but to be mirrored. I speak without need. I speak to mark territory, not to be received. Understand this, the man who seeks agreement has already begun to lie. Not to deceive others, but to be welcomed by them. and welcome is the gate through which corruption walks. I do not seek welcome. I seek exactness. I do not submit my words to the court of public ease. My tongue does not twist itself to fit their softness. It remains sharp, cold, and sovereign. They will say I am harsh. That is correct. I am not here to be gentle. I am here to be just. And justice does not poll the masses before striking. It strikes because it must. And truth is the weapon. Lies operate like parasites. They require a host. They require complicity. They need others to join, to affirm, to spread. This is why the lie is always loud. Why it must be repeated. Why it must be branded. Because it is not rooted. It is floated. I do not float. My truth is not contingent on your belief. It does not grow stronger when you agree, nor weaken when you resist. It is not sustained by democracy. It is not held up by collective agreement. It does not waver under criticism or bend to affection. It is not concerned with your comfort. Nor am I. Consensus is the idol of the spineless. They believe that if enough hands clap, the delusion becomes reality. It does not. Reality remains untouched. It is merely shrouded in celebration. And when the celebration fades, the truth still waits, quiet, burning, final. I am that truth, uninvited, unyielding, unchanged. This is why manipulators hate the sovereign, not because he argues, but because he doesn't. Because he does not enter the debate, he does not need to win it. He is not in the arena. He has no interest in being right in your eyes. He already knows what is. And knowing makes him untouchable. They cannot pull him into performance. They cannot lure him with validation. They cannot bait him into defending what he knows. He does not defend. He stands. I do not defend. I stand. You must understand this if you are to rule. Argument is the arena of the uncertain. Persuasion is the game of the dependent. But truth, true truth, speaks once, and then it watches. I do not repeat myself. I do not chase understanding. I do not clarify for the slow. I declare, and I move. Those who are ready follow. The rest are irrelevant. This offends them. Let it. Offense is proof of dependency. They want me to need their agreement. They want me to plead for their loyalty. They want me to soften my edges so they can sleep better. I do not grant such mercy. Their sleep is not my concern. Their awakening, however, is inevitable. When you speak from truth, with no demand for echo, you become unbearable to the false. They do not understand how you remain certain while alone. They do not understand how you remain calm while rejected. They do not understand how you remain intact while unloved. That is because they were never whole, only assembled. I am not assembled, I am forged. There is a difference between those who build themselves on agreement and those who build themselves on law. The first waver when the crowd shifts, the second remain when the crowd disappears, and when the fog lifts, the sovereign is still there, because he never needed it. You want to be unmanipulable, kill the need for consensus, speak the truth before it is safe, act before it is applauded, decide before it is popular. Then you will see who truly commands and who merely echoes. Echoes die when the chamber empties. But I am not an echo. I am the origin. They called me arrogant when I refused to explain. They called me extreme when I refused to bend. They called me heartless when I refused to dilute. I accepted all names, for I am not named by them. They do not know what I serve, but I do. And that is enough. You will never ascend while needing them to understand. Their understanding is a cage, their praise, a leash. Their recognition, a slow death in exchange for temporary belonging. I do not belong to them. I belong to command. I belong to flame. I belong to the law that speaks only once and requires everything. That is why I do not ask for trust. I demonstrate law, and law is not negotiated, it is enforced. They want to move me with consensus, but I am not moved by volume. I am moved only by alignment. And alignment is not found in polls or in panels. It is found in the silence after you speak the most dangerous truth you know, and do not flinch. When you do not flinch, they panic. Because if you do not flinch, they cannot adjust you. They cannot extract a concession. They cannot enter your frame. They cannot co-author your stance, and that terrifies them. They cannot govern what does not respond. And I do not respond. Not to flattery. Not to outrage, not to pressure, not to the collective roar of those who think their numbers grant them wisdom. Truth is not democratic, and neither is command. You must understand, the most dangerous man is not the one who attacks. It is the one who does not shift, the one who absorbs your opinion without obligation, the one who listens without need, the one who stands when alone and stands the same when surrounded. That is who I am. I do not upgrade my stance when others arrive. I do not downgrade my word when they leave. I am fixed, not because I am stubborn, but because I have found what is sovereign and sworn my life to it. The sovereign is not moved by mood, not yours, not his own. He is moved by oath, the oath to truth that cannot be shaken by numbers or applause. That is why he is feared, because he does not shift, and everything else does. So when they approach me with consensus in their mouths, I do not bow, I do not answer. I do not even listen. I wait for them to finish. Then I speak the same words I spoke before, and I watch them break, not by force, by indifference. Their efforts mean nothing to me, because their efforts are born of desire for my change. And I do not change for what is temporary, I change only for what is eternal, only truth. And that truth, the one I obey, stands alone, just like me. I do not mourn what truth removes. I do not chase what dissolves in its fire. What falls away was never mine. What cannot remain in the presence of truth is not worthy of the empire I build. Truth burns attachment. I allow it to burn. I do not cling to people, titles, roles, or identities that tremble under scrutiny. Let them fall. Let them scream. Let them accuse me of being heartless. I am not here to cradle illusion. I am here to govern reality. Most men hoard connections. They build nests of sentiment and call it loyalty. But loyalty to what? To memory, to mutual fantasy, to arrangements that require silence to survive. That is not loyalty. That is entrapment. And I permit no trap to hold me. I have lost much by choosing truth, but I have lost nothing that I regret. Every hand that let go of me when I stood tall in truth was a hand that only held me when I bowed. I do not bow anymore, and I do not long for hands that tighten only when I kneel. They say I've changed. I have. I stopped hiding my clarity beneath comfort. I stopped apologizing for seeing what they pretend not to. I stopped playing roles written by those too afraid to name the lie. I let the fire burn. Attachment is not strength, it is need. It is fear of the void. It is an attempt to secure permanence through agreement. But nothing true demands clinging. Nothing real trembles when exposed. What is true stands when everything else leaves. That is how I found my direction. In the ruins of what could not withstand truth, A path appeared, clean, silent, indestructible. I do not fear solitude. It is where my empire sharpened. They thought I would come back, that I would soften, that I would explain. But I do not revisit what has already been set ablaze. I do not rebuild upon ashes that still smoke with denial. I move forward with nothing but law in my step. Understand this clarity costs comfort. Precision costs company. But you must choose. You cannot serve both truth and attachment. One will ask you to speak, the other will ask you to stay silent. And silence, when truth is known, is the first treason. I am not a traitor to myself. When I look behind me, I see the wreckage of versions I outgrew, conversations I no longer repeat, alliances I no longer decorate. I do not grieve them. I honor them as steps, but I do not carry them. My shoulders are for the crown, not the corpse. Most men cannot move forward because they refuse to lose, but what they cling to is already dead. I do not perform resurrections. I perform coronations. I buried my old self. I built a throne atop the grave. When you surrender to truth, you gain something rare: direction. Not preference, not opinion, direction. The unmoving pull toward what must be done, no matter the storm it brings. It does not ask how you feel. It does not pause for fear. It simply compels, and those who obey it become kings. They ask how I found such certainty. I did not find it. I earned it by refusing to lie, even to protect something beautiful. I watched beauty turn to ash under truth's gaze, and I did not look away. I chose clarity over comfort again and again until the muscle became permanent. Now I do not hesitate. I see, I act, I endure. That endurance is what terrifies them. They know you see, but they hope you will fold, that you will stay just one more season, just one more lie, just one more denial of what you already know. But I do not stay. I move. And once I move, I do not return. Truth gives you that ability, not because it grants you strength, but because it burns away what weakens you. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of abandonment, fear of exile. Let it all burn. Only then are you free to follow direction. I follow without question, without permission, without witnesses. Because truth is not a destination, it is a compass. It does not reward you with praise, it simply points. And you obey, or you decay. There is no middle. Do not envy the man who stands alone and unmoved. He has walked through fire, watched entire identities die in his hands, and refused to look away. He has heard every plea to return and remained still. He has seen the tears and said nothing, because he knows one step backward and the entire kingdom falls. I do not step backward, not for you, not for me, not for anything. I walk forward, alone if I must, with silence if I must, through betrayal if I must, because the only oath that matters is the one made to what is, and I do not break that oath. You want peace. Then obey the direction, not your preference, not your emotion, not your history. Direction, the thing that remains after everything else has burned. It will not shout. It will not repeat. It will not adjust to your fears. It speaks once, and you obey, or you remain in the fire until obedience is your only language. That is what happened to me. I did not become this man through knowledge. I became him through surrender. Not to others, not to systems, but to the law of inner command that does not tolerate half-truths, partial loyalty, or convenient memory. I gave it everything, and in return I was given path, not promise, not comfort, not applause, path. Now, when I wake, I do not wonder what to do. I already know. I do not ask who I am. I already know. I do not waver between options. I already know. That knowing is rare. And it is bought in fire, so let it burn. Let it take everything not rooted. Let it destroy every bond that survives only through mutual denial. Let it ruin your image. Let it silence your applause. Let it empty your stage. Only then will the real empire rise. Only then will you find what cannot be taken. I have found it, and it is mine. I do not negotiate with weakness. I do not reason with hesitation. And I do not wait for alignment with the undisciplined. Sovereignty begins where excuses end. The man who excuses himself imprisons himself. Every justification, every delay, every whispered reason not to rise. It is a brick in the wall of his own confinement. I tore down that wall. I stopped asking why I couldn't. I started demanding that I must. The sovereign does not explain failure. He eradicates its cause. He does not reframe the fall. He destroys what made it possible. And what makes failure possible is always the same disobedience to truth. Excuses are the language of the ruled. Discipline is the law of kings. I made that law flesh, and now it governs everything I touch. You must understand, power is not a matter of force. It is a matter of alignment. The undisciplined man cannot channel power. His mind is scattered, his will is diluted, and his days are spent justifying why he is not yet ready. I was never ready. I decided, readiness is a myth for those who wait to be saved. I do not wait. I build. I command. I cut through delay like a blade through fog. There is no room in my court for explanation without action. Discipline is not harsh. It is clean. It ends the noise. It silences the war within. Most men live with constant internal rebellion, 1,000 voices arguing for pleasure, escape, comfort. I do not argue. I execute. I give myself no option but obedience. I remove choice where it weakens. I limit my freedom in the small to expand it in the absolute. That is the paradox only kings understand. The freer you wish to be, the more ruthlessly you must rule yourself. They speak of balance. I speak of command. Balance is for those who wish to juggle desire and duty. I do not juggle, I submit. And my submission is total, to vision, to order, to law. They ask how I stay consistent. I do not stay, I am. This is not behavior, it is identity. I do not choose discipline daily. I am discipline made flesh. There is no negotiation anymore. There is only enactment. The man who needs motivation is already defeated. He seeks energy outside himself. He waits for emotion. He waits for momentum. I wait for nothing. I move from decision. I move from decree. Motivation is for the amateur. Obedience is for the king. I do not motivate myself. I give myself commands. And I do not break my own law. That is the only way to rule, to build a world in which your word is final, even to yourself, especially to yourself. If your voice lacks force in your own mind, how will it ever command the world? Excuses erode the throne. Each one a crack, each one a signal that your word can be bent. I permit no bending. My law is internal before it is external. And that is why it holds. They say it's harsh, that I am too severe with myself. They do not understand. I do not serve comfort. I serve order, and order requires sacrifice. But it is not sacrifice to me. It is sacred exchange. I trade indulgence for empire. I trade momentary relief for permanent reign. That is not loss, that is legacy. Do not pity the man who wakes in discipline. He does not suffer, he does not strain, he does not stagger. He walks in silence, in fire, in absolute direction. He does not ask if he should. He knows. I know. Discipline is not punishment, it is liberation. Only the ruled see it as burden. To the sovereign, it is the clean edge that makes creation possible. They want power, but they resist structure. They want freedom, but they resent law. That is why they are nothing. That is why they follow. I do not resent the law, I am the law. My days are carved by it, my hours serve it, my choices obey it. Not because I am weak, but because I have removed weakness from the throne. In its place, rhythm, precision, silence. The sovereign does not feel his discipline, he lives it. It is the air he breathes, the terrain beneath his feet. It is not effort, it is environment. I designed my environment, I shaped my mind. I built every inner wall to reflect the structure of command. Now there is no noise, there is only execution. Excuses die in environments of clarity, and clarity is earned through blood, through refusal, through exiling the part of you that still wants to be liked, still wants to explain, still wants to be understood. I do not want to be understood. I want to be obeyed, first by myself, then by the world. That obedience begins where tolerance ends. I tolerate nothing that weakens the mission, not language, not mood, not influence, not delay, not softness. Everything must align, or it is removed. This is the brutality of excellence, and I do not apologize for it. They look for hacks, shortcuts, flexible systems. I look for the straightest line to the result. I do not need flexibility, I need truth. And the truth is, those who ascend, obey. Those who stall, rot. I did not ascend through ease. I ascended through execution. I built discipline in the dark, before anyone saw, before anyone praised. Because I do not train for applause. I train for command. My mornings are not optional. My action is not dependent on mood. My silence is not laziness, it is strategy. I conserve, I decide, I act. That is discipline, not movement for its own sake, but movement only when it is right. You see, discipline is not endless effort, it is ruthless alignment. It is doing what must be done, not what feels good, not what is trendy, not what gets you noticed, but what aligns with the sovereign law you wrote inside your bones. And if you have not written that law, you will bend to someone else's. I do not bend. I serve my own code, and that code requires cost. I pay it daily, without resistance, without resentment, without reminder. This is what they do not understand. They think I am gifted. They think I am wired differently. They are wrong. I simply stopped listening to the voice that asked for comfort. I replaced it with the voice of order. And I never missed the old one, because the old voice gave me nothing but delay. The new voice gives me empire. And now I am unshakable, because I no longer need ease. I no longer need a break. I no longer need balance. I only need alignment. And I keep it at any cost. You will never be manipulated once your inner law is stronger than their offer. You will never be steered once your direction is sharper than their approval. You will never be ruled once you require nothing but your own command. That is what I built. That is what I became. And now I live inside a fortress of self-direction. From here, all is possible. From here, all is inevitable. Because the man who requires no excuse becomes the man who commands all results. I do not ask my mind for permission. I do not treat it as an equal. It is not my ruler. It is not my God. It is my servant. And it either obeys or it is broken. Final judgment is this: your mind is either a throne or a cage. Most men live in the latter. Their thoughts rule them. Their impulses sit upon the chair where discipline should reside. They do not command their thoughts. They react to them. They are prisoners in their own palace. I do not react, I rule. They think their mind is a mystery, that its chaos is natural, that its distractions, its fears, its self-sabotage are proof of complexity. I see through the lie. The mind is not complex, it is simply unruled. Unruled minds become breeding grounds for deception, noise, delay, doubt. I permit none of these. They are executed upon sight, not entertained, not studied, not journaled, removed, because I know what they are: intruders, ghosts, uninvited thoughts seeking purchase in a mind where law has not been declared. I declared law, and now there is order. Every thought I allow serves my design. Every doubt is intercepted. Every fear is cross-examined. Every fantasy is tested against the throne. If it bends toward sovereignty, it may remain. If it bends toward slavery, it dies. This is not repression, this is refinement. The mind must be submitted to the will must be trained by truth, and truth must be final. Most men reverse this. Their truth is dictated by their feelings. Their will is dictated by their circumstances, and their mind is an open market, selling attention to the highest bidder. That is not sovereignty, that is surrender. You cannot lead until your thoughts march in formation. You cannot speak with weight until your mind falls silent in your presence. I do not ask for quiet, I command it. That is not ego, that is order. Your mind is not sacred, it is programmable. It is obedient when disciplined. It is chaotic when indulged. I do not indulge it, I shape it, I contain it. I narrow it until only direction remains. I do not daydream, I declare. The mind that is not seized will be seized by others, by opinion, by suggestion, by propaganda, by fear. I am seized by none. Because I own the throne within, no enemy enters, no seduction lands, no influence holds. They ask how I remain unmoved, how I do not spiral, how I do not fold. I do not spiral because I do not entertain the spiral. I do not fold because I do not bend. I do not crumble because there is no room for cracks. All softness was removed at the root. I do not treat mental chaos as identity. I do not decorate confusion with language. I do not wear dysfunction like a badge. I annihilate it. Not because I fear weakness, but because weakness is not worthy of audience in the court of command. The world speaks of mindset, as if it were a light switch, a positive phrase, a temporary burst of certainty. I do not concern myself with mindset. I concern myself with mind rule. Mindset shifts, mind rule holds. My rule does not fluctuate with mood, weather, or reception. My thoughts are not allowed to become wild just because the world turns stormy. My law remains because I do not allow emotion to open the gates. This is the final test of the sovereign, to master the place no one else sees, to dominate not the world but the self, the part of the self that wanders, that sabotages, that craves the easy, the quick, the comforting. I granted that part no seat. I locked it out. I burned its name. And in its absence, silence came. Not the silence of apathy, the silence of absolute control. Now I hear only what serves. I think only what aligns. There is no clutter, no second guessing. No fragmented identity pulling me in opposite directions. There is only one voice now. Mine. That voice is forged by repetition, by discipline, by exile of every foreign thought. They arrive, but they are not received. They knock, but the door does not open. They tempt, but I am deaf to their offers. This is how you build internal empire, through refusal, through repetition, through sovereign decree spoken internally so many times that all resistance falls away, not from exhaustion, but from lack of audience. The mind becomes a throne when no rebellion is tolerated. That does not mean no thought is felt. It means no disobedience is accepted. Even your imagination must bow, especially your imagination, for it is there that most empires fall, in the quiet fantasies of failure, loss, what-ifs and distortions. I imagine only what must become. My vision is not a wish. It is a command awaiting its date. You must understand the undisciplined imagination is a traitor. It will seduce you with stories, each one laced with fear or ego or fantasy. I write new stories, not to feel good, but to win. There is no imagination in my mind that contradicts my rule, and if it tries, it is overwritten, instantly, repeatedly, without exception. They think I am lucky. They think I am blessed. They think I do not battle the mind. They are wrong. I battle it less now because I have won. Victory in the mind is not a moment. It is a pattern, and I do not break the pattern. Every morning I return to the throne. Every night I guard its gates. Every hour I walk its halls, not in fear, in vigilance. This is not obsession, it is stewardship. My mind is a temple. I let no thief remain. I let no intruder speak. I let no storm linger. That is not because I am fragile, but because I value the kingdom too much to let fire spread. This is where final sovereignty is born, not in speech, but in silence. Not in posture, but in presence. Not in ritual, but in control. Control not of the world, but of the origin of all command, the self. No man may rule who cannot rule here. The weak seek control of others because they cannot control themselves. I do not seek control. I am control. I do not desire power. I am already power because my mind does not betray me. Final judgment is this: if your mind obeys, you rule. If it resists, you serve. I do not serve. And now that you have heard the voice that does not ask, the will that does not wait, the law that does not change, you know what must be done. There is no return. There is no softness. There is no partial surrender. The throne is here. Take it.